We'll dispense with our normal formalities this morning and begin with thanking Julie Marie for bringing clarity and purpose to the meeting. It's a real big decision process we're going to go through here this morning, so appreciate all your help and involvement. So, Julie Marie, you want to begin?
Actually, why don't we have Mike explain what exactly is needed and why?
Okay,
Thank you.
I've had a number of instances over the last few months where I kept bringing up that this was going to happen, that sometime towards September, October, that we're going to have to think about getting our servers replaced and our storage. And those were the two main things in particular at the time. I'll put the immediacy on the servers that we currently have and the storage, that updates to those servers as far as firmware updates and so on will end next February. We will not be able to get any firmware updates on the storage or the servers at that point. And so if an operating system gets updated and we need to have our server firmware updated to match those updates, we won't be able to do it. There's a good chance that maybe even the servers would fail at that point, because they're expecting the hardware to be able to communicate with them, and now they don't have firmware updates in order to accomplish that. And so I can remember when John was part of our Thursday meetings, and we originally talked about, that's been a long time ago, John, it's been a few years ago now, but the number stuck that it was 200,000, but that was servers and storage. And if you look at that, I think we pretty much accomplished that. We're right there. We're a little bit under 200,000 to get the servers and storage replaced, and we were able to get that done. And I had a good feeling that that was going to be able to be accomplished because I can catch these companies on a year end. If I try to get the things updated and they get to a year end for their bookings, you can really apply the lever to them, So those particular items there, they tell me that we're almost 80% off the cost. I was able to do that. When it comes down to that, they're looking at year-end stock market prices and stuff like that. They're looking for people that's going to re-up with them or trying to turn to them. And you can really apply the lever. So I always look for that. The same thing with software and everything. That's why you see our software, it doesn't come at the same time all the time, because I'm trying to catch these companies at their year end, or if I can't do any better than that, at least a quarter end, so that I can apply some leverage onto them. The last thing that we had on this was dealing with the network switching, which was, now that's a different animal. It used to be that network switching, they were not that pricey, but still pricey, but not that pricey. But now they're doing so much more because they're doing packet inspection and all kinds of stuff dealing with trying to get things where they need to be and need to be securely, handling things called virtual private networks, which is a security envelope. The packages are being pushed through. And so those switches have to do so much more, and they have to have so much more processing than what they used to have. And so our current switches right now are at end of life. They have been for quite some time, and we really needed to get those updated. And so this was a good time, now that we got the server and storage prices down on that, to try and include the network switching. Let me give you an idea. Back in, before I was hired, 2016, Adams County put forth a purchase of new host servers, which was not as many as what we have on this quote, and storage, not as much storage as what's on this quote, but it was a different time era as well. We were at around 540,000 in 2016 to pull that off, and we were buying fewer host servers, fewer amount of storage, and a little bit of switching to go into it. 540,000 back then, 2016, so about 7 years ago. And so to replace this, I initially said that we had to do a little bit more updates at the jail because their wireless networking is really poor. Is based on home wireless networking over there at the jail right now. So we got to get it into more professional means. And over here, we got the same wireless networking and our switches move that data between the wireless networking and so on, they're end of life. So those two buildings needed it for sure. If we get into what happens now over the two ports, they need it as well because we have all kinds of outside traffic coming in daily. And people are sitting there with their phones and probably PCs and other type of equipment that is in there. Maybe not the people that's sitting back in the gallery part, but the attorneys and other people that show up. We have no idea what's on their PCs, what they have on securities, if it's update or not. So we can't allow them in, and but they need to be in. That's what they come back. We got to have in. We got to get out to the internet. We got to be able to see back at our offices and things like that. So there has to be added security there. It can't be the same security that we had, like it was a home network anymore. These are not good enough solutions. And so with looking at the networking, now we take a look and we say there's 4 buildings now. At that point, do we want to pick up the rest of Adams County government and try and do the switching now? And these prices are also, believe it or not, they tell me is 80% off the list, as high as what they are. Because I'm catching even them, we're getting in with the same company, HP, we're getting it off the list price now. So we're getting a bargain on it, which I know, what does list price mean anymore? At certain things, you got to understand that. But the basis is, I really put the leverage on them. I really did. And so,
so these are like option 1, all in for everything you're talking about is 590, and for option 2 is 739, basically.
Option 1 only includes the bare minimum for networking here, which is this building and the jail. So then the rest of it would include all the Adams County government locations, even the highway garage, to try and get them up to snuff.
So will we, like, this will be, sound like we're going to finance it for 5 years and all that stuff. And so basically, are we essentially going to have a kind of a perpetual payment? I mean, in 5 years, we're going to be doing it again.
Yeah.
And refinancing and all that. And so what about, I don't know what systems are interlinked and everything. So I'm curious, like the city of Decatur or Bern or Geneva, do they play into this at all? And if so, I mean, they would, do they cover, if they do, which I feel like they probably do to some degree anyway, I mean, they're covering their costs for their equipment.
They got to pay for their own if they want to do it. And that's the problem for it, is basically they won't do it.
So how will we, if we're gonna try to be on the same system, how will we,
Well, they,
that work?
yeah, they'll just continue to use their other ones and, you know, they won't be as secure. We can't really get them. We can only tell them, this is what we think you should do, you know,
Right,
until we can put some teeth into it and actually say, you either try and follow some of these things or you won't be on them. You know, at that point, there has to be something like, at least there could be like a firewall that's put into their systems, which is a SD-WAN portion of that we could make all these outside non-Adams County government buildings. They would have to put that in so that if something did come in, we could electronically and logically shut their facility off from the rest of us. Like if they did something wrong, and, you know, they weren't following along, they weren't doing the firmware updates, they weren't getting the type of switching and the type of equipment that they needed to do, because we can't force them to do that.
right.
Then if we had that put in at those places, and we shouldn't pay for it, what we should do is we should make them sign a contract that says, if you want to continue to be with this, you're going to have to put that in. And so that's a section down here where it says Fortinet SD-WAN on the front page of this thing is towards the bottom. Our 5 buildings, we already got it into this building and the jail and Superior Court. And we covered the North Tower and the South Tower. The sheriff covered the North and South Tower through what he's doing. Okay. So those buildings are covered. What this amount is this covers the rest of the buildings in the Adams County government with, it's a firewall SD-WAN. It's an enterprise level firewall. And so that would go into the courthouse and then community corrections.
So what do they have the interfaces in our system exactly? I mean, I'm just trying to understand exactly what that looks like and.
Yeah, all the places, what we have, and that's a good question. You have the internet where we have high availability firewalls in this building. So all the government agencies, they come into this building to get out to the internet through what's called a wide area network.
Okay.
Okay. So we have connections from all Adams County government buildings into this one, but then let's take Decatur, for instance. Decatur has the water department. They have the same sort of thing that comes into here. City Hall, Riverside Center, Decatur Police, and the fire department. They have a connection into this building. They don't have their own internet connection.
So we are the hub for them as well?
We are the hub for the entire county. And that works in the county's favor, because the state put in a system called FireEye that really sniffs out all packets coming in and out, and it's dealing with elections. That's what they stuck it in for. And it's free of service for us. And it was only supposed to cover the clerk's office. I asked them, I said, will you do it for free for all Adams County that's on our network? They did. They said, yeah, well, we put an agent on every machine. That kind of helps out in some of this stuff. So if they start to find traffic that's coming in and they see that it has anything to deal with election misbehavior and so on, then they'll block it, incoming and outgoing, if there's things that aren't taking place. These particular sites that are going around there, it can even go a little bit farther than that. But they all benefit. And we're not charged for it. And they don't provide that for cities. The state doesn't provide it for cities. They only provide it for counties. So because of our design where everything comes in and it flows out through this building, that device sits right behind our firewall. There's multiple of those devices that are in there because we got that to qualify for everything in the county. So they benefit security-wise by being part of our network. If they weren't part of that network, they would not have access to that device that would check for security things and so on. And it was nice that the state did that in a way because we don't have the staff to even monitor. The state does all the monitoring. They provided it for free. They've now updated that for another 5 years. The contract with FireEye, now Trellix, goes in until 2028.
So if the cities don't update and to whatever they need to update to, and now all of a sudden their firmware updates and things like that aren't, I mean, will that end up shutting them down?
If we put this in and if we can see some stuff with the Fortinets, if we require them on their next contract, that they have a certain amount of time that they got to put that in, that would be an assistance for us because right now there's hardly any way for us to get down there without physically just shutting down their switches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to travel there. When these things happen, and it sounds like, Fred, you're kind of aware of what I'm talking about. When these things happen and we have a security breach, it's like seconds and minutes,
Right.
Means so much. And if I had to get, let's say, to Burn PD, that's 20 minutes for me to get there. And that's if I'm ready in the truck,
Right.
to go down there. And they would say, hey, something's up and, we got to try and figure out what it is. What we need to do is if we figure out something's out and it takes time to figure out what's happening and so on before we would make a move and say shut down the place. But it would be nice if we had something where we could just logically from a remote situation say, hey, there's something going on here. We don't want to spread this out to the rest of us. And if we could just shut that down, and that's really what we need to do. And also to help us inspect things as well, because it is a firewall as it comes in. Right now with their current switching, there's nothing that's being inspected or anything like that because they're not capable of doing that. If we at least stuck that device into these places, then we would have some inspection going on of what's happening and some alert mechanism that says these things are taking place and you need to take another look or do something with it, So
I just definitely, I mean, I think they need to be aware of what's happening and that we should definitely notify them that if this or that happens, whatever that may be, you would know way better than me, obviously, but that they have a potential to really lose service, it sounds like, right? And so if they don't do these upgrades as well. So just that they're aware and I don't know if it's possible I know this deal, the reason we're having a special meeting is because it's time sensitive. But I don't know if they could get a deal too if they, worked on it or not. But anyways, I do think they should be notified that, hey, you have to be facing real problems in these scenarios. And if you don't invest in that stuff, then, that's kind of on you and not, but just so they're aware.
Yeah. And they've been talked to, but, Fred, a lot of times they don't understand what it is, and I'll say to them,
Right.
And there has to be something that I think needs to be put in place, at least where we have a minimum standard that they have to go through, and they're going to have to provide that. And that would be our cloud, that when we come into next year with the contract for IT services, there should be something stated in there that you're going to have to, I would recommend, let me put it this way, I would recommend, because you're the people, you and the commissioners, you're the ones who's going to have to put the bite into it, because me alone, I can't do anything about it, I think that there's some members that said, well, we don't want you to tell them that they're going to be off the network. Okay, let's understand what the situation is. My department covers 18 buildings in the county. Adams County government are 6 of those buildings. So that means there's another dozen out there that don't belong to Adams County government, and we have no say-so on what they can buy or anything. I mean, they can go out and do whatever we want. We tell them, we recommend that you do this, but if they turn around and say, no, we're not going to do that with you, there's nothing much I can say to them. I can tell them, I said, Decatur Police Department's one. We have a recommended PC for them to get. They went off with another company. I said, that's on you now. I'm learning, and we're going to support what the Sheriff's Department's doing. If you don't get the same thing as the Sheriff's Department, then that's on you to do any hardware updates or whatever needs to take place. If you're having trouble with biometrics and getting that to work, that's on you now. Because we already have something that we worked through here. It's easy for me to bring on extra sites that they follow along with the stuff that we already have in place.
Right.
And that makes it pretty simple. But if I got to go out and say, well, here, we're going to do this. For instance, we tell them, do iPhones if you want any support on things. But they go out and do Androids. No, I'm not supporting Android. I just will not do that. And besides, it's a worse security risk than iPhones. iPhones are far superior for security than Android equipment. So we're just not going to cover those things. That's on you now. But you can see a little bit of what you're bringing up here is that it does turn out to be our problem after a while if they continue to use these things, and now all of a sudden it brings in some security risk on us. And I'm going to have to cover that with my staff and what we have in agreements and so on to try and protect us at that point. So we do have to have more clout in our contracts on saying this is what you're going to do to be. And if you can't do it, then we might just have to tell you you can't be part of this.
I know we can't solve that, or necessarily not here to solve that today, but
It's a good conversation.
we need to definitely probably get that addressed. But
Yeah, it's a good conversation, and we need to talk about it. It maybe not here, but
I just
we
want
need
to
to spend more time with it.
I just wanted to make sure I tried to understand as much as I could. about
Yeah, it's
what we're doing.
12 buildings outside of those, and we've had one building that I had, it was the water department in Decatur, and the software that they're using, and we can't handle security with that. I mean, you're just going to have to get off of our network. I can't let that go through, so.
I made a meeting.
Appreciate it.
So with these WAN, are they WAN or you say WAN? What is that? Or with these boxes or whatever, these little firewalls, if you put them in all their locations, will that cover some of the issues?
That would help us out from a standpoint, at least going into those places, because we have so much now with people being mobile. And they're taking their notebooks home and they're working from home.
Mm-hmm. Then bringing them back on the
And then they're
network.
bringing back in. Well, they can be compromised once they're off of our network. Right now, coming in and doing the checking, but now
Yeah,
the mobility part of it is when you take them out, we can put some stuff there, but we have no idea what they're going to, because they can actually shut off the VPN. So
so it looks like, these 5 that you have listed are about $15,000. So about $3,000 a pop.
it's like 3 of them. Yeah, there's actually 3 locations because Superior Court's already taken care of already because.
Yeah, you have at the service complex here, detention center, Superior Court North and South Tower for $15,000.
They would all be covered once we got those particular things put in place in circuit court and community corrections and the highway garage. Those are the 3 that don't have it currently, the SD-WAN part and the firewall.
So about
Then-
$5,000 a piece?
Yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to associate a dollar to let the other entities know that to remain on our network, and would that solve their own personal software issues? I mean, we're not responsible for it, but it would alleviate anything coming and damaging our system.
That would assist in that. Okay, that would assist in it. And it's gonna be a little bit more than that because there would be we had to get the firm from Indianapolis that managed to have to come in, and there's some labor to put them in and to get them going on what needs to be open for that particular site and so on.
So it'd be more than $5,000 per building?
Yeah, probably $7,700 to $7,500, because that's, unless you can work a deal out that they're coming in, they're gonna put them into the site.
Spend a week.
It sounds like, so option one just covers basically this building. Option two covers all of our buildings.
For networking out, and it picks up some stuff in the jail dealing with the wireless.
Okay.
The first 2016, they bought some switching, and they're still covered, and they're still not end of life because they were bought in here. The switching that was bought in the rest of the buildings in Adams County government, at least Landon had to buy maybe that north. So that gives you an idea of how long they've been in service, you know. And switching a lot of times, and I can't speak of what's going on, what will happen in the future, but practically their end of life was a really long time once you bought them and they supported them. But now with the different security measures and so on, end of life is coming quicker because sometimes the hardware can't cover what it is that they got to do compared to, there was hardly anything that it had to do before. It just had to pass through traffic and get it to the right place. Now they have to do so much more.
Well, it sounds like we should probably do option two. I think that's what the commissioners are recommending too, right? So is that the first thing we have to do is approve that, or does that take a motion, or what is that?
Well, one question I had is, I know you mentioned where you were planning on, like, where was this, which line item did you say you wanted this to come out on the budget?
Well, that's my second thing I was gonna ask about, Corey, is I actually, I mean, we have I feel like a pretty healthy, general fund right now. And I'm just thinking of other things that we're trying to, save money for and get money for, instead of coming out of the cum cap. I almost feel like we'd be better off going out of the general fund.
Was that where you wanted it? Was the cum cap? What was the request?
I had it put in place for this year, and it's also, you guys approved the budget for next year. It was, I had earmarked 1138. And there's two line items in there, 42,500 and 42,702.
Oh, this is we already approved this?
Yeah.
Oh,
For this year, and I still got funds available in there to make this work for this year, so we can make the first year's payment out of that
Okay.
already, and we can make the second year's payment out of that already. And they don't know where it's coming from. I mean, as long
Right.
as we make the payment, so
yeah, that's an internal thing. I
yeah,
understand.
so there's 2 years in there that you guys, this year and next year, if it still continues with the approved budget, that I would have enough to cover the yearly payment of this.
So to be clear, the reason why we needed today's meeting is because Mark and the commissioners would be the ones to sign the lease,
Right.
the lease agreement. We can't bind the county without the council's okay, because it's something that's beyond what's already been budgeted for next year. Because it would be for a 5-year lease term.
Need a motion. Mike,
Because it's within next year's budget, but you're saying because it would go for 5 years, that's why we're talking about it?
Correct.
Yeah.
You'd be approving it for the next years after what isn't budgeted.
Correct.
But we can approve it though and not necessarily, we don't have to take it out of that line item if we don't want to.
No, but you have to approve at least the commissioners being able to be authorized to commit to a lease.
Gotcha.
So that's what today's approval, that's what council's approval is needed for.
But our commissioners just need to know that, the county's committed to making the payments on the 5-year lease.
Right.
And so then we're gonna negotiate the best lease terms that we can with the best rate and then get that put in place. But in order to sign the lease, then I've got to be able to sign a certification as attorney for the commissioners that all necessary steps to bind the county to make those lease payments has taken place.
Right.
That, we talked about this many months ago, budgeting this in. Is
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that was good, okay. I was confused. I was like, I thought it was in there, and I thought you spaced
Yeah,
it out.
I started putting it in there
Okay.
in 2020 to make all this stuff go. Yeah.
Okay. So that makes me feel.
Yeah.
All maintenance as far as labor and, like if a piece of hardware fails, it's covered under this agreement.
Yeah, I told them, normally it only goes, this is part of the leverage that I have. Normally it only goes for 3 years.
Okay.
I said, if you want to do this, you're going to have to supply all maintenance and hardware replacement for 5 years. I'm going to put it under lease to do that.
Okay.
And then, let's say that when the next 5 years come across and our switches are still good enough and we don't have to replace them, which may be the case. You've already seen where switching can last a longer period of time than servers and storage. Then maybe the next 5 years, you're only replacing the servers and the storage, at that point.
Okay.
And so making this investment now, maybe that's going to be the new trend. Maybe switching will only last 5 years or something like that before it goes into life, but it's not typically been that way. It's typically going a long period of time, but it's been so long. I'm pretty sure, I think maybe Pat Norton was the one that put some of these in, if that gives you an idea of how long this has been. He's the first director of IT for Adams County government. So that's when some of these things went in, and we've been going off of that ever since. But we just, now that they put an end of life on it, and they said those, because they can't do firmware upgrades to them anymore, because the hardware can't take it, and you can continue to use them, but that doesn't make a difference if you want to spend your life back into there, but there's going to be security issues at that point.
it'd be better for Mark to explain.
No, Unless there's any other questions, I'll make a motion to go ahead and do option 2 there.
Well, my question would be, should we have Mark explain the financing before we go in with the option choices?
No, that's fine with me.
Can you explain the financing options at this juncture?
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dennis is wanting you to explain the financing options available, where the money is going to come from to pay for all of this after the year or two that has been budgeted already.
Well, we're looking at doing a lease with potentially Indiana Bond Bank. I just got terms back from them yesterday. We sent a proposal down to get rates. Mike also had lease terms from 2 other leasing companies, so the commissioners are looking at all 3 of those options to see what is the best rate in terms of the 5-year lease and the payment. But as far as how you budget and make those lease payments, that's entirely up to the council. You've got money budgeted in 1138 for 2024 to make that lease payment. How you decide to budget that for 25, that's up to the council. You could take it out of county general. I can tell you back in 2016, when we did this originally, the money was taken out of rainy day fund.
You guys already.
and budgeted. So it's up to the council. It's in the budget for 2024. It's just, the commissioners could not commit to making this expenditure. Number one, we don't have enough money budgeted to just pay cash for it unless the council did an additional appropriation. You do have money budgeted, though, to make the lease payments, which is what the county has traditionally done. And that's what Mike had budgeted. So that was prepared. I just can't have the commissioners commit to a 5-year lease without the council saying, yes, we approve that lease and we will make sure we budget the money to make those payments. Where those payments come from, that's up to the council.
So we don't have a final solid dollar number yet, because we don't have the rates of the
Well,
terms,
we have a final solid number for the equipment, for the purchase,
but not the financing.
but not the actual lease term. Well, we've got proposals and which we could accept, but, that's up to, that was all writing on today.
So how would we approve an amount? What would we approve?
You're
A
just-
blanket?
You're just approving the commissioner's commitment to purchase the equipment and pay for it with a 5-year lease, and that you will appropriate the funds necessary to make those lease
As
payments.
they come in?
Correct.
Which right now, we've got it budgeted for the 1138, but in 20,
Yes.
I mean, who knows right now? For me personally, when 25 rolls around, as we should do with all things, I'd want to evaluate where we take it from. But right now, we have it budgeted out of 1138 already. So maybe we leave it like that for
Yeah, no
24.
requirement for a commitment going forward as to where the money comes from.
That's
The
all.
only
It'll be up to
commitment is
council in
we're gonna do the
25.
lease.
That's why I was just asking them is, so since it is already budgeted in 24, all I'm saying is in 25, I think we're going to want to look at it and maybe it makes, it might be different in 25. Maybe it makes more sense out of the general fund. Maybe it makes more sense
Right.
staying right where it's at.
Okay, I'll second Fred's motion.
And you're just, what you're doing now, what you're motioning and approving or voting on
So the
is
motion is
option
based,
2,
option 2 to that we will appropriate for the next 5 years.
letting the commissioners sign the 5-year lease
Yeah.
on option 2, basically.
Yes.
How you fund it beyond 24 will be up to council.
Sorry for interrupting you, but I thought we ought to clarify that.
Yeah.
We have a motion before us to approve option 2, or
And sorry, just one more question real quick. So is there any, I'm not saying we should or shouldn't do this, but I'm just trying to think out loud. Is there any benefit to paying the whole thing up front? I mean, it just depends how much they're charging you for that lease, for the financing portion of it, as compared to what the treasurer's earning on interest right now. So I don't know if that's worth thinking through, or if we need to decide that now, or if that's something we decide later.
I don't know
You
if
could-
there's any
you could make it-
advantage.
You could decide, I think today, in order to lock in the pricing that we have, we just need to know that the council is committed to either pay for it by way of 5-year lease or pay for it net 60. You could do an additional appropriation and appropriate money out of rainy day fund and say, let's just pay for it and not incur financing charges.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the rate? The interest?
The rate from Indiana Bond Bank that I've got right here,
5.6383%,
Over the course of the life, what does that come to?
60,
60,000?
60 months.
that's over 5 years.
Yeah, so what's at that rate?
Interest, total interest over a 5-year term on option 2 is $124,000 interest.
So then the question is just, if we have that money in the bank, can Ed make more than 5% by not spending it on this? Can he earn us more than 5?
Well, 5.6.
We can't right now, no.
do that.
I don't think.
He is right now, isn't he?
Stan.
No, I
No,
don't think so.
not now he isn't.
No.
Stan.
Stan?
He's above 5, but he's not a 5.6.
I guess my only question is, if we pay for it up front, this is probably more for Mike. If we pay for it up front, does that come for 5-year service agreement?
No, it's in there.
So I was actually going to ask it the same question. We wouldn't lose any quality of service by that, right?
You're just prepaying it basically.
Right.
Well, I don't know. Is that something we have to decide right now, or for now, I guess?
No,
I
we
don't know.
definitely
I guess I'm asking that.
Approve,
We don't
approve
have
them
to.
signing, basically is what we're here for.
I mean,
Just need
I
to
think-
approve the purchase.
approve the purchase. If the commissioners do sign the lease date, is there any prepayment penalty on the lease if we decide at the next meeting to go ahead and prepay it all?
We can check and make sure there is no prepayment penalty is what we'd have to do. But the terms of the purchase will end up being, I don't think they're even net 30, but we'll have to see. They'll give us time to execute a lease agreement. So I would say that we'd have until after the first of the year to decide exactly how you want to pay for it. This equipment is going to be delivered for probably January or earliest.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea to make sure we have the option to pay it all up front without any penalty.
For our purpose, we just need to commit.
We just need to commit to the purchase today.
Yeah, which
What you gave us today is the drop dead to either approve or.
yeah, that's what,
Their end of the year is at the end of this month, so we lose all that advantage. It makes no deal with them at that point. Starting in their new fiscal year, they're trying to get as much business as they can so that their stock price stays favorable. So they're doing that all over the place. It's not just us. But
right.
Have a motion and a second to approve option 2 in terms of allowing the commissioners to proceed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get it done.
So we're doing option 2, and we're gonna have the option to pay for it either over 5 years or all up front. Either way with no penalty, and that just, so it'd be, you said 100 how much? Is what we'd save?
It's like on the schedule I've got here, it was $124,000 with interest.
So if we pay it all up front, we would save ourselves
Yeah, you pay it all up front,
124,000.
you pay it all.
So we can even possibly pay some out of ARPA, half of it, if we want to finance half, pay half ARPA.
You could.
I mean,
That's a really
it's
good idea.
a lot of different options.
Different option. I have one other question for you, Mike, and it's not related to this. I know we approved Geneva for ARPA funds, but they had said that there might be some additional monies needed for that. Do we have an idea what those additional monies would be?
yeah, when they came in and asked for it, I hadn't even quoted the wide area configuration for them, the wide area network, because they have to do their own that goes into the city hall, and then their fiber from city hall comes up to us. So that wasn't even quoted because that's the most difficult thing to quote. It's also the most expensive of the two, you know. So I told them originally, you guys need to pay for your PCs, and you need to pay for your internal cabling that you had, and that was with the current guy who was in the office at that point, Anthony Davidson, I think at that time. And I said to him at that time, you can use your ARPA funds to try and help do the wide area network connection and so on. Here again, I don't think he understood what I was talking about. What they brought up was the easy thing for me to quote, which was, it was a verbal quote on PCs that I gave them. And then we had to do a formal quote for the cabling inside the building. And that's the one that the formal quote for the internal cabling was $130-some thousand to do all the buildings. And then I just told them, you can buy the PCs as you need them, and here's a general quote on that part. And that we need to talk about this other thing. You can go out through emergency communications. They got grants that would cover that, because with the sheriff's department, they have to get down there and they have to do that. So, you know, we could have done that. Well, they came in, they asked you guys to help pay for the PCs and the cabling, not the other part. The very thing that I told them they needed to do on their own. They need to buy their own PCs. Now, we can specify what it is that they're going to buy and so on, and how they're going to get the cabling done. Because that's important, because you got people that they don't know anything about cabling and how to do it right. And so we get people that actually test the cabling, and they warranties with it, you know. So they brought that in. That's what you guys approved. I would rather that the money that we would give them would help pay for the WAN, for the wide area network part. So that's coming in at the low part at about 160 or something like that. Something into there. And it may come in even higher for that.
Right now, they have 140 from us. I
Yeah,
think.
it's about that, 138, something like that. Yeah. So I had to wait forever just to try and find people to do the power for that building down in the city hall because the way it's built, most of them didn't want to even try and tackle it. But we got Gene who does the work. Blakely does the work for us. He didn't think that he could go out and do that, but now he's feeling better and he says, I think I can get it done. He did offer us a quote. He's the only person that would give us a quote. Most of the rest wouldn't even do it. And so that's where we're at with it right now. And it's going to be over. So I didn't even start on it this year because, you know, we knew we were going to be over. And I'm not going to put my neck on the line for the extra that it's taken. Right now, we're talking 20,000 extra and maybe more, you know, because they're not really going to, they do a quote on the wide area network and we're basing it off of wireless because there's no way that they can afford fiber. It's just going to go through the roof to do fiber out to those buildings. So we're going to have to go wirelessly. We're going to have to put towers up. There's going to have to be towers on maybe the other buildings because some of them are setting pretty low. Some of them they can get up maybe basically by just putting a dish on the building. And we have a large tower going up into there, but we got 2 tower quotes at 100 feet and one at 120. It may have to be that we have to go 120 up by City Hall just to catch some of these buildings that are sitting in low places out and about. Maybe we go 120 and then we got to stick a tower up over on those buildings as well, see? So we just got estimates, and then when it comes down there, that's why it could go even higher than an extra 20,000 or so. I think they looked at maybe 175 to get that done, 160 to 175. But that's a difficult place down there because, you know, they do have some low places and so on that are there, and they got a lot of trees that are blocking some of the areas. And, you know, we're wirelessly and it's point to point, and it has to be clear line of sight. We right now they're burned through trees. That's why some of these outbuildings, they have no communication there because there's trees in the way and the stuff is not tall enough. And so sometimes they can have connection if there's a spot through it and the wind's not blowing and things like that. If you get what I'm saying.
What you mean?
Yeah, so that's where they're at. So they're kind of up and down and everything else, you know, and so it's just difficult for us to put agents on their PCs that have to report back to our security software when the connection back to us is not there, you know, and so they fall behind.
Yep, I just wondering where that was at, because I know we talked about it a couple meetings ago that there may be additional part of
I
the
just
request.
decided to delay until, you know, we had to get some further commitments because I knew you guys wouldn't want me to just go out and get started when I knew that there wasn't enough money to get it covered. And then, okay, now why, you know, I could hear you guys, why did you start this when you knew you didn't have enough money to do it? And they didn't have enough money to do it. Well, then they said, well, we budgeted another 100,000 for the following year. Why aren't you started? And I says, well, that's because you can't spend it this year when it's budgeted for next year. And I don't know what you might spend it on in the meantime. And then we come up and we're still, we have to really put some force into this to make sure, because that could happen. They could go out and they could spend that budgeted money on something else that they got going on. And then when we come in with this, we could have our necks hanging out. It would be mine, right? That's what it comes, why did you let that happen? And so I just paused, when I didn't have all the quotes for the power and everything else. I wasn't gonna do it until I get this, and now we're seeing where we're at.
Okay.
So.
All right, I just wonder, because I know we talked
And-
about there may be
and,
additional.
anytime if you've got additional questions, my office is right upstairs. You can come in and see me.
Yep. So,
Does this have to be paid by the end of the year, or is this going to be next year?
Well, it'll.
For our purposes on,
I think it's gonna have to be paid 30 days from when we receive it,
It is almost next year.
right?
Well,
Because I can put.
to advertise what we need to advertise in the proper amount of time and get it before council and everything, we just need to know if it's,
If they end up paying the whole thing, we'll have to
Look
do an additional this year.
at
But if you're gonna do the payments, it's budgeted.
yeah, it
Correct.
just depends on if they
So
opt
we'll
to
need to
do the whole
know
thing.
by, what'd I say, November 27th to
the end of
advertise if you're gonna.
October, it's not gonna be delivered tomorrow.
No, no.
So it'll be next year before it's delivered.
It most likely.
Okay.
Most
Then we
likely.
have some next
I
year.
mean, we could get some sprinklings coming in, maybe. But.
We were just talking about if they decided to pay the full amount to avoid interest fees and all of that, so.
That, the only thing they're gonna do is, once it gets on premise, then we'll have 30 days to pay for it. And, I don't have a good feeling on when it's
Okay.
gonna be coming right now,
Okay.
but
We should be good
I
then.
would think that it's most likely gonna be a month or
Budget's
so.
right now.
And then we have 30 days to pay them once it shows up.
We should be fine then.
Without further discussion, any comments otherwise, we call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Bob,
Second.
John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
See you, Rex, see you, folks.